I want to take the opportunity to welcome Janet Nguyen, Supervisor of Orange County's 1st District, to this committee. Janet's story is a story of millions of Vietnamese who fled their homeland in search of a life free from the horrific human rights abuses that we still see perpetrated today in that country. Janet has come a long way from the dangerous journey that her family took on a 30-foot raft when she was just a small girl fleeing her war-ravaged homeland. Today, Janet is the highest-ranking Vietnamese American to hold elective office in California. And just as important, Janet is a tireless advocate for the Vietnamese American community in Southern California and throughout our country. We welcome her as well. War. Ms. Janet Nguyen, Supervisor for the 1st District of Orange County, first woman supervisor to represent that district, first Asian American, first Vietnamese American to serve on the Board of Supervisors, as well as the youngest supervisor elected in our history in Orange County. And we have Mr. on human rights. Janet.
Good morning. Good morning, Honorable Chairman Royce and members of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. I want to particularly thank Chairman Royce for your leadership, decades of leadership, in support of our county and the County of Orange and the cities and the residents you represent, particularly your effort in fighting for human rights in Vietnam. I also want to thank Congressman Rohrabacher and also Congressman Lowenthal, your representative and your leadership for Orange County and also for the people of Vietnam is greatly appreciated. It is my honor to be here and appear here today before this esteemed committee to comment on the continuing violations of religious freedom and individual rights in Vietnam. In the end, I request your assistance in fighting for greater respect for personal liberty by the government of Vietnam and the release of human rights advocates who are currently in prison throughout Vietnam by supporting H.R. 4254, which has been introduced by Chairman Royce, which I have had the distinct privilege of assisting in drafting, and has also been approved by the Orange County Board of Supervisors, seeking for your support. Despite Vietnam's status as one of the U.S. normal trade partners, Vietnam has not reduced its oppression of its people, including journalists, dissidents, or simply human rights advocates. As a county supervisor whose district includes the Little Saigon community, which is the largest Vietnamese community outside Vietnam, I speak for many in voicing our concerns about the continued political oppression which exists in Vietnam, and hope that we in the United States will stand up and demand that Vietnam respect the basic tenets of freedom and democracy that we, as a nation, expect from our trade partners. As a beacon of civil liberties around the world, our country has never shied away from its commitment to basic human rights. We will not stand idle by while tyrannies repress their people, least of all our own trade partners. Access to our economy and the opportunity for financial benefits that access presents must be earned through compliance with the basic rules of human dignity and fairness we live by. Unfortunately, Vietnam has continued to push the limits of our tolerance in this regard. Almost 4 decades after the Vietnam War, Vietnam has continued its use of force, intimidation, and imprisonment to silence and oppress its people. The incarceration of songwriter Tri Vinh Vo, also known as Viet Cang, who has been sentenced to 4 years in prison, is a prime example of the political oppression that the Vietnamese people must continue to live under. There are also other examples of oppression, illegal detention, and suppression of free speech and religious figures throughout Vietnam, such as the Venerable Thich Quang Do, Reverend Nguyen Van Ly, Reverend Vinh Con Chin, blogger Dio Cao, also known as Vinh Van Hai, as well as countless other human rights fighters. We believe the United States alone has the unique power to effectuate political change in Vietnam. And for that reason, we appeal to this committee to lend your support to this noble cause. As the highest-ranking Vietnamese American elected official in California, I humbly ask that you support H.R. 4254. This action will send a clear message to the government of Vietnam and the officials engaging in violation of human rights that the United States has no tolerance for intolerance and political suppression, and that we will hold those officials personally accountable for their actions. I hereby submit a representative numbers of signatures from thousands of committee members from around the country, which is being displayed to show the overwhelming support for H.R. 4254. I also submit a list of names of Vietnamese citizens who we believe have violated the basic human rights of other Vietnamese citizens. A case summary with evidence of each of their violations is included for your review. Given their blatant disregard for human rights, these individuals should not be allowed entry into the United States of America, nor should they have the ability to use our financial system for their own personal benefit. Therefore, I urge you to consider adopting the list of individuals who are complicit in human rights abuses under H.R. 4254 and adding these individuals to that list for sanction. I would also like to take this opportunity to express the concerns Vietnamese everywhere that despite international condemnation, China has become more militarily aggressive against its neighbors over the past few years. China's aggression has escalated and now includes the violation of Vietnam's territorial rights and capsizing of a Vietnamese fishing boat on May 26th this year with 10 fishermen on board. This conduct is unacceptable and poses a threat to the stability of the region. These actions are hostile and detrimental to the sovereignty interests of Vietnam. Examples of these actions include China deploying an illegal deep-water oil rig in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone, ramming into Vietnamese private fishing boat, and firing a water cannon at a Vietnamese naval patrol ship, which injured several sailors. Given China's increasing aggression, I am fearful that these aggressions could soon result in the loss of life and escalate tension in the South Asia Sea. I ask that this committee also look into this issue as it may significantly impact our nation's interests in the Pacific Rim. Again, thank you for your time and your attention and for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Nguyen. Thang, go ahead with your testimony, please. But I was going to ask Supervisor Nguyen, you're in a unique position of speaking with people from Vietnam. A lot of people have family back in Vietnam. Do they see the trend lines in Vietnam? What do they share with you about their hopes, aspirations, what they think is happening? Maybe you could just give us the insight from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In particular, the people in Vietnam are not, I mean, because of what's going on with China, there's been more and more willingness to come out and speak against China. However, the country of Vietnam has not been very supportive of that. So there's a greater mix of concerns within Vietnam that freedom and democracy is not going to change. We need to, in the United States, with your leadership in this committee, to have to force the country of Vietnam to allow the freedom of speech.
How do you see efforts in Congress, such as House Resolution 4254, the Vietnam Human Rights Sanctions Act, trying to target or list those who are involved specifically in human rights abuses?
Yeah.
Naming them. How do you see that impacting change in Vietnam?
It will have a great impact, Mr. Chairman, because H.R. 4254 particularly targets individuals, not the country of Vietnam, but the individual who imposes these violations, whether they're judges, elected officials, police officers, chief of police. These individuals who now has a responsibility and have to think twice to be able to make any kind of sanctions against individuals and citizens of Vietnam before they have to now think, because if not, they would not be allowed in our great country or be able to use our financial institution. And so now we are looking at targeting individuals, and hopefully this will make them think twice, 3 times before they cause any actions against individuals.
Targeting those who use the truncheons or those that order the beatings.
Yes.
Or order the arrests of people, of young bloggers for simply talking about an issue like freedom of speech.
Yes. And not only that, Mr. Chairman, but also individuals such as judges who does not allow the court system to be fair.
Right. Okay, let me ask...
Does worsening China-Vietnam ties present an opportunity to the United States to fully engage with the Vietnamese government on human rights issues? They are actually appealing to us to side with them against China. China is being very aggressive in the South China Sea, and both Vietnam and Philippines have been besieging us to help them. Does this present an opportunity for us to say, okay, you want our help, we want to see an improvement on your human rights abuses?
Congressman, absolutely. This is the opportunity, is that we need to tell the country of Vietnam and the government of Vietnam is that we are here to help and support your cause and to protect the Pacific Rim, but you also need to honor our own liberty and our rights and everybody's rights. And so, yes.
Mr. Nguyen, would any of you care to comment on the tensions, and with this infighting, will it have any effect on human rights issues?
I believe so, Congressman. One of the things that we should ask of Vietnam to immediately release the people who have been voicing against China's aggression for the last 2 years. They've been put in prison by the government of Vietnam just for those reasons, trying to protect their own homeland. So the government of Vietnam the very first step is to release those who they've imprisoned in protecting their own country. That's the first step, and we need to take this opportunity. The infighting within Vietnam government and the people of Vietnam are rising, but they need the support of the United States. It is our opportunity to have to say, we will help, but only and only when you start setting the stage to release individuals for their basic human rights and allow the people of Vietnam to enjoy what we enjoy in the United States.
Thank
Congressman, thank you for your questions. I have been an advocate for years to ask our government to put Vietnam back on the CPC. Violation of human rights, religious rights, and also human trafficking, as you've stated, has increased. It has not decreased. They need to be placed back on CPC. We need to put the human trafficking issue at Tier 3. The act on H.R. 4254, it seeks to achieve specific targeted goals to achieve greater human rights in Vietnam and not interfere with our nation's bigger strategic concerns. We need to put these individuals who violates the human rights and religious freedom of the people of Vietnam on target. Tell them you will not be allowed in the United States, nor you will be allowed to use our financial system. And in regards to the human trafficking, it's not just human trafficking for labor, but children are exploited for tourism, for sex labor, so many. It is incredible. I have 2 young children. I cannot fathom the idea anything could happen to my children or any children in the world to be used in these ways. So we need to protect those children, give them a future, give them a life.
Mr. Smith, if I could explain a point.
Rights and fundamental freedoms of LGBT persons throughout the world, and what more can and should be done to protect basic human rights of people from this community.
Congressman, I just think in general, our country needs to do a lot more when we have trade partners around the world. They need to also honor our liberty, our rights, and our human rights that we give to our people. And so regardless of the individual, I think everybody deserves the human rights and the human basic freedom. And so I think that we could and we should demand more from these countries.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Limiting any kind of broadcasting limits the freedom of speech and views. So I absolutely agree that we need to allow shortwave radios across the country, because that's when we allow the freedom of speech and the freedom of the press to be able to give different opinions to the people of Vietnam. And so we need to support allowing that.
Thank you.